Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session. It is Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. It is 9:05 a.m. This meeting is set to go until noon. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board, joining you via Zoom. Vice Chair Ty Menser in the boardroom, as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. County Manager Rena Chavez is excused for today. We'll start with our standing agenda item, which is homeless strategies. I see Keely Marino.
Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino from Public Health and Social Services with a brief report for you today. One, just really wanted to point out that Ensign Road is completely cleaned and cleared. The cement blocks have been placed all along the roadside on Ensign Road, and those who had opted into going to Quinn Street Village have moved over. Those who opted not to have driven their vehicles away. So that camp has been officially closed. And I just wanted to take a moment to shout out to the City of Olympia staff, as well as Providence, as well as the providers that were working directly with the residents on that street for so long. There was a lot of advocacy to slow the process down in order to make sure that folks were given reasonable options of places to stay once they were removed. Thoughtful consideration of how to address what to do with the vehicles that were no longer going to be used as residences. It's just a really thoughtful example of camp removals, and how with a lot of collaboration and conversation and advocacy and thoughtfulness, that less harm is caused and the end product is where everybody wanted to get to in the first place. So just appreciate the efforts that went into that. I know it was very lengthy, and it did not come without a little stress. So just wanted to take a moment to appreciate that process. And other than that, everything else kind of remains status quo in terms of the right-of-way initiative and other happenings in the county around homelessness. And so that is my report for the day.
Thank you, Keely. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menser?
No.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Keely. Okay, moving on is the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for a meeting of November 1st, 2022. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menser, the approval of the Tuesday, November 1st, 2022 agenda, and the approval of the board meeting minutes from October 25th, 2022. Next will be an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update. Robin, is there anything?
No updates. No updates that I'm aware of at this time.
Thank you. Okay, consent items. There's only two matters. First one, item 3A from the assessor's office, a resolution or classifying position 01R01312 in the Thurston County Pay and Classification Pay Plan.
Good morning, Commissioner. Before I begin with the agenda items, I just want to say thank you to all the staff who are attending, because I am not as up to speed on some of these items as Romero generally is. So I appreciate all the staff who are with us this morning. This first item, number 3A, is from the assessor. It is a reclassification of one of his appraiser positions from an appraiser assistant to a senior appraiser. Our assessor does this on a cycle. He is able to recruit in at a lower class, and then once the person is trained and experienced, they promote to a higher class within the same position. So you've often seen this position be reclassed up or down as the need presents. And the assessor has enough funding in his budget to absorb the higher cost. happy to answer any questions about this one.
Question, Commissioner Edwards.
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer.
No.
Okay, no questions for me. Next item is item 3B, BJA Smart Prosecution Grant Waiver of Non-Competitive Bidding and Contract Execution.
This item from the prosecuting attorney's office approves a waiver of the competitive bid process and an award of a contract by the prosecutor with measures for justice. This item is funded from a smart prosecution grant from the Bureau of Justice Affairs, a federal agency, and the prosecutor was successful in getting a waiver to competitive bidding from the federal government. So this item waives the county's policy regarding competitive bidding. It has been reviewed by our internal auditor, and the contract is ready for board approval.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
And there's no money coming from the general fund?
No county funds at this time.
Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
No.
Okay, no questions for me. Next department items, item 4A, approval of the voucher list for the week of September 26, 2022.
Thank you, Commissioner. This item is the approval by the board of vouchers issued in the entire county. The board approves vouchers every week. The total amount of vouchers on this list is $3,977,344.30. This is not on your consent agenda because it does include items for the atrium. I don't have those amounts handy, but I'd be happy to look them up if you would like.
We can talk about that later, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thanks.
Commissioner Menzer?
No.
Okay, moving on to item 5A from the Commissioner's office. This is appointment to the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board. And this is an item that we added on to the agenda for Zaid Chaudhry to the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board. These matters are usually on our consent item, but I will be abstaining from this vote. So I had asked the county manager to move it to our department items.
Thank you. This item, as you stated, is an appointment to the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board of Zaid Chaudhry, thank you. And it is, the board has discussed this item and it is not on consent so that Commissioner Mejia may abstain.
Any questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I do have questions. I'm just curious if there's a problem that I'm not aware of, or I guess no explanation is needed, but I don't want to be missing the boat on something. And I might be outside the loop here.
No, I think it's, there's nothing, it's more of a, I think it's more of a personal for me.
Okay, well then, I have to say, I hate taking actions that I don't have a full understanding of. And so now I'm questioning that.
I don't have anything against it, and the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board, you know, they voted to have him removed. I just,
The board did vote to have somebody removed?
and approved.
Approved. The Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board has recommended approval for this person.
Thank you.
Right, but the board has the final say, I guess.
Yeah.
I just feel that something's amiss that I'm not aware of, and it'll give me some time to get to the bottom of it by maybe removing this for a week or something. That's all. I want every respect for the chair, for sure, but there's something going on that I'm not aware of. That's all I'm saying. I don't understand it, so I would ask that be removed until I can look into it.
Okay. So item 5 is removed.
We'll remove this item from today's agenda so you have time to follow up, Commissioner. Move to next week.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Munster, I didn't leave you a chance to speak on this item. Is there anything you would like to add or say to the matter that?
It doesn't sound like there's 2 votes for approval today, so we can save it for next week.
Okay, moving on to community planning and economic development. Item 6A, set a public hearing for comprehensive plan docket item CP4 capital improvement program.
So this item, the board has reviewed the docket item CP4 capital improvement. This item is to set the public hearing. It will be on December 5th at 6 p.m. For the capital improvement program. This is done every year in coordination with the budget hearings. So this is the facility plan, the 6-year plan that is coordinated with the budget.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Edwards,
Yes.
go
So,
ahead.
so we have, every year, we do a 6-year plan. And basically, we just add one more year onto the plan unless we've had to make some kind of major changes, I take it. Is that what's going on?
There are changes made every year.
Every year.
The last year comes off, the next year goes on. And you've been briefed on the CIP on at least 3 occasions. The board spent an entire day looking at it in detail.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Munster, questions?
No.
Okay, no questions for me, thank you. Moving on to emergency services, item 7A, pre-hospital portable ultrasound devices.
So this item is to purchase ultrasound devices.
And Kirk Harding is here, Robin, if you need.
Yeah, I think I am gonna ask Kurt to speak to this item.
Kirk.
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. Thurston County Medic 1 is requesting permission to purchase and acquire handheld portable ultrasound devices. The vendor, Butterfly Network, has these devices and that are capable of being deployed in a pre-hospital environment. And that's critical because where durability is essential when you're out in the field with paramedics utilizing these devices. The vendor's novel approach with microchip technology has circumvented the fragility of and I'm going to get this, piezoelectric crystal, I think I got that right, that has been utilized for ultrasound devices up until this point. Butterfly, the vendor, is noted as in the sole source waiver competition forums, the only device that simultaneously contains microchip technology and provides 3 planes of view with a single probe. This dramatically or drastically improves portability, durability, and functionality. The internal auditor and the prosecuting attorney's office have both signed off on the sole source waiver request. And this has been budgeted in the current 2022 EMS Council recommended budget that was approved by the county commissioners in December of 2021. And I think there was a question last week on the item itself, the AIS. I think we did the adjustments to that resolution, and I think that's been taken care of as far as the sole source as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Menser?
No.
No questions for me. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Next item is the Medic One vehicle replacement. Robin, would you like Kurt to do this one as well?
Sure.
Okay.
Kurt?
I know a little more about this one, but Kurt can probably say it better than I can.
Sure. Again, Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. Medic One is looking to replace a 13-year-old Ford Expedition that's been recommended for replacement by our vehicle repair facility. This vehicle serves as a primary mode of county transportation for Medic One staff and support a day-to-day administrative tasks, and also has a dual function as a first response vehicle when there's a requirement for that. And there's been a lot of demand for that over the last 3 years between COVID and other issues that have been happening within the EMS system. As duties rotate back and forth on this, the utilization of this vehicle has climbed, and we needed to refocus the need for the department to replace the vehicle that's been budgeted for replacement since the year 2020. Typically, vehicles are replaced at the 10-year mark. Vehicles such as these are replaced at the 10-year mark. So one of the questions that came up with this last week was October 25th agenda, saying is whether or not an all-electric option was available. And an all-electric option we found is not available. We went looking for and trying to determine if that one was available. We also tried to see if it was viable to do an off-the-shelf purchase of a Ford F-150 Lightning, which is an all-electric vehicle, and then separately outfitting it as a response vehicle. But we were informed by Ford, the manufacturer, that they were not recommending the all-electric vehicles as a first responder option. Indicated that their first option for a first response vehicle would be model year 2024. One of the other pieces we found on this was that if we do go to an all-electric option down the road, that the county is going to need to install an electric charging station at Medic One for a rapid recharge capability, since the vehicle is used for response situations. The rapid recharger, I think a level 3, is required to provide power off a generator if there is a widespread power outage, and that we can rapidly recharge within 20 minutes, 80% of the vehicle capacity. There's already a backup generator at Medic One that's hooked up to the vehicle power outlet. So for future purchases, we're looking at the all-electric option, as well as trying to look at how long it would take and the cost for installing down the road a vehicle recharging station. And the current vehicle is in need of some significant investment if we don't replace it, including new updated emergency lighting, the light assemblies on the front of the vehicle, and then there's issues with the transmission needing potentially to be replaced, and then the interior needs some updating as well. So subject to your questions, that's the information we've been able to pull together in the last week.
Thank you. Okay, question, Commissioner Edwards.
Kurt, I just can't remember when we authorized this through EMS, was it 15%, not to exceed 15%? Was that, I just don't remember that as the norm.
Does it say 15%? I believe it's supposed to say 10%, and I'll take a look at that and adjust that if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menser, questions?
So Kurt, thanks for the follow-up. The items you would need to, assuming Ford hits its target of 2024 for a recommended first responder response vehicle, the other items that you outlined, is that something that the Board of County Commissioners needs to fund or direct, or does Medic, I don't know how the funding for something like that would happen, what you described would be needed with the extra charging capability, et cetera.
So that would be a discussion I would immediately have with the budget office and with central services, because I know what we need. I just don't know how to get there, but I don't think I need to get there by next week. So I think we can time and then can make recommendations during the biennial budget development next spring, because there are going to be, I believe, some really good options down the road in about 2 years, not only for this type of vehicle, but also for potentially ambulances and medic units. And so, and we want to take a look at that, take a long, hard look at it.
Okay, yeah, I would just ask you, I don't want to get in a situation where those options hit the market and then we haven't thought about the stuff that's going to be needed, and then we need another 2 years to get, so we need to be thinking on parallel tracks. So I appreciate that if you could sort of dial that up for our consideration next year.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we may be able to consider that sooner since ER&R and facilities are working together on installing charging stations for county vehicles. So we may be able to, with the board's approval, of course, soon, expand the scope of that project, and that wouldn't have to wait to get, to get going. So Kurt, you and I can talk about that offline.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 8A from Public Works. Contract award for the solid waste facility pump systems upgrades and improvements, CP number 91717. And Susan is here, Robin, as well.
Right, she's here. Thank you. So the board did review this item last week, and this is a project to upgrade the solid waste facility pump systems. The item has a base bid, then that is for the leachate system. Bid option 1 is for the condensate system, and bid option 2 is for the stormwater system. Public Works received 4 bids, and Rogland's was the lowest responsible bidder. So we request the board's approval to award this contract and be able to do the work.
Thank you. Susan, anything you'd like to add?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards, questions?
And this is dedicated funds from
Public
tipping.
Works. Tipping fees, yep,
Thank you.
no general fund.
Commissioner Mentor, questions?
No.
No questions for me. Moving to the Sheriff's Office, item 9A, renewal of contracts with Tactical Athlete Performance Institute, LLC.
This item is, as stated, renewal of a contract for Tactical Athlete Performance. This contract, the pilot program to get our sheriff officers back to work sooner after having some type of an injury, has proven to be very successful. This would extend the contract for 3 years at a cost of just under $27,000 a year. And the board just approved the addition to the sheriff's budget in your preliminary midterm budget adjustment. So this is paid from the general fund, but it's in the budget at this time.
Thank you. Under Sheriff Brady, anything you'd like to add, sir?
Yeah, good morning, commissioners. Just as Robin had mentioned, our 1-year pilot, we feel was very successful, and is obviously there's a cost avoidance that comes along with this, but more importantly, we're getting our employees back to work, getting them healed up quicker, and our communication is almost instantaneous with Tactical Athlete or Rebound. So the 1-year pilot was very successful, and we would look forward to having the approval for additional years.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I guess just clarification on this, and the money savings is gonna come from things like L&I payments and overtime and needed, is that right?
Yeah, the largest cost avoidance that we see from this program is in the form of overtime. On average, we're getting employees back to work many, many weeks sooner than they would normally, waiting for the standard process. So whereas we might typically wait 4 to 6 weeks for an MRI, we're getting MRIs done within a week or so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mensah, questions? Thank you. After that, we will go through our standing items. At 3:30, we do have a public hearing. If we're not done with our regular meeting, I will be pausing that until, so we can address our public hearing. And this public hearing is to hear objections to the resolution of intention to establish the Offlet Lake Management District number 24.
Yes, the public hearing this afternoon is for, to hear objections to the resolution of intent to establish the Offlet Lake Management District. It is phrased that way because that is what the state law requires, is that the board hear objections, but of course you also would like to hear support if people would like to come forward with support of forming the Offlet Lake Management District. You have received a petition from the residents that would form the district. This would be to hear public feedback on that proposal, and then after you close the public hearing, we would have a follow-up on a later date for the board to decide whether or not to move forward with a vote.
Thank you. Tim, anything you would like to add?
Good morning. No, that was a great summary.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
We had a communication from one of the lake groups about the potential of consolidating a hearing and making something happen in a more timely fashion. Is this going to have an effect on that?
So Commissioner, I believe that was from Pattison Lake, the other lake that's in the process of forming. And that was an email responding to the board's request for feedback on whether or not the Lake District would be amenable to receiving a loan from the county to start up in 2023 and then do double assessments in 2024. The forming committee, for lack of a better term, has responded that they would prefer not to do double assessments in 2024 and asked if there were any way to hold a public hearing on the two items that you mentioned at the same time, or to have the process going at the same time regarding the setting the fee and the formation of the district, so that we could give the information to the treasurer to add to the tax roll and collect the assessment in 2023. So that is not related to the Offlet Lake. And I don't know what the feedback. We'll have to ask our attorneys if doing both at the same time is an allowable concept.
Tim, do you know the answer to that? You're not an attorney, I realize that, but have you looked at that question? And is it a possibility if the attorneys say it's legal?
Commissioner, it appears to me, in looking at the RCW, and again, I am not an attorney, and this would need to go to legal, but it appears pretty clear in statute that there is a linear process, that it is one step after another, and there is board action required at several of those steps. So It's doubtful that there is an option from my perspective, but again, we would need to go out to legal for that.
Will we have time to have a discussion about this with council? Because time is of the essence due to this particular situation. And I want to give every consideration to the lake groups that are trying to do the work of keeping our environment clean and our water clean. So will we have council here later today? Will we have council here? Maybe we've got council here now. I don't see anybody in the
I
room.
believe that later this morning would be sufficient time to get council up to speed on the question. But we do have, I guess we don't have a check-in on Thursday.
Is this something that we can discuss next Tuesday at our agenda setting and maybe get, have legal counsel look into it? I'm not sure if that's enough time, but.
I can certainly ask, and we can ask how to expedite that, because I believe Commissioner Edwards is correct, the time is of the essence here.
Well, I'll go ahead, sir.
Commissioner Menzer has his hand up. Commissioner Mejia.
Okay, Commissioner Menzer, go ahead, sir.
So since you're getting legal involved in a question regarding Patterson Lake, I want to throw this in. I meant to bring it up at County Manager Update because I had meetings with two of the commenters who made public comment from Patterson Lake at the last board meeting. Two questions came out of those meetings. One of them is overlapping Commissioner Edwards. It's about whether or not, we were told it was unlikely we could get, the timeline done this year, but that was like at the beginning of the process last spring. Now we're sitting here in October and the question was, has anything changed to where, we absolutely can't or we absolutely can? And it would certainly be cleaner and simpler if we could get the process done. And the same question was asked that I guess Commissioner Edwards is talking about the linear versus concurrent, process. So I also am curious whether at sitting here right now, November 1st, I'd certainly support whatever's legally permissible in terms of getting it completed so that we're not, having to do moving money here and there and double assessments, et cetera, which is way more complicated than necessary. It's proven to be. The second question though, came up and it may also need, I think it does need legal attention on this question, and it relates to the testimony we've heard multiple times that there's law that says that because this is a non-navigable lake, the lake owners own pie-shaped slices to the center of the lake, and therefore the treatments that would be proposed under this lake management district would be infringing on the private property rights of the various property owners, some of whom are not even included in the lake management district. Both the Lake Management Steering Committee chair as well as the person that's making this claim, I was meeting with them together and we all agreed that nobody really, two of us agreed that we don't understand this question. Legal's never weighed in on it. The board's never discussed it. The Lake Management Steering Committee chair absolutely, she was actually the one that said, yeah, we need to know the answer to that because we don't know how to respond to it and we don't know if it's accurate or what if it's not accurate, why isn't it accurate? So that's something that based on those conversations I had with those community members, I would like if the board, if my seatmates are amenable to have a legal opinion, it seems unlikely to me, and I told my uninformed gut reaction to the citizen, but we all agreed that if there was enough gray area in the way the statutes are worded that we would like to have some clarity from legal, just so we know that that's not an impediment to what we're trying to do here.
Thank you, Commissioner Menser, for bringing that up because I also met with them yesterday. They set up a meeting with me yesterday and I met with them to discuss this and brought up some of the same points as well. And I told them kind of around the same thing is, we would need legal to really look at this and give us some direction on how to proceed. And that really would be the first step. And, the Pattison LMD steering committee representative agreed as well. So I'm right there with you, just having that conversation with those two citizens.
Okay, we will request both those questions from legal. We'll try to get an immediate answer on the consolidation of the process. I don't know how long it'll take to get an answer to this property ownership question.
If the legal counsel wants to call me for any clarity, I can probably better explain
Right,
what, if there's confusion about what the question actually is.
right.
I believe this person has also submitted legal briefs, or not legal briefs, but his own legal opinions, hasn't he?
I think that we do have his testimony in writing, but we'll check and make sure. See what we have.
Okay, so that will conclude. If there's no additional questions?
Wait,
There-
hang on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do have an issue for today's agenda.
Go ahead.
Just to discuss, I don't know if it's proper place to get it on or not. We have a correspondence from Mr. Pettit about office space being provided to other elected officers here in Thurston County, including ourselves, I guess. And an RCW has been provided, and the verbiage in the RCW basically says counties shall provide suitable office space in their respective courthouses, and that they may have satellite offices. I don't recall that has been litigated at this point. We talked about whether or not the county seat was okay, and apparently that has been reviewed, but I don't recall any discussions, and the RCW is very clear. RCW 36-16-090 makes it very clear that we are responsible to have our offices and other elected offices, and they're laid out in here, at the county courthouse, in the county courthouse, but we may have satellite offices. So are we going to be calling the new location down at 3000 Pacific Avenue satellite offices of the court? I don't know. I mean, this also becomes a timely issue because we're due to move pretty quick. And I don't want to be in a situation where I'm actually breaking the law. I've done some research and I can't find where this law requiring this 36-16-090 has been modified or exemptions given on this particular issue. So again, I'm going to refer maybe to the county manager that are we going to have some ability to have a discussion? I see we're having an executive session today, but I don't know if we can include that
That's a
discussion or not.
completely different topic. Commissioner Menser has his hand up. Commissioner Mejia.
Commissioner Menser.
This came up, we've already dealt with it in great detail. Elizabeth gave a very detailed legal opinion about it, and I would just suggest that she call Commissioner Edwards and remind him of what we've already gone through. I do not support any further effort of council when we've got so many legal issues, to go just rehash something we've already gone through.
I guess I'll only say, I don't recall that we specifically addressed this issue. We talked about
Absolutely,
county seats.
specifically.
Okay, well, more to come then. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our agenda for Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards. Approval of the Tuesday, November 8th, 2022 agenda and approval of the board meeting minutes from November 1st, 2022. We have one presentation from Public Health and Social Services and its Veterans Day proclamation.
Yes, Commissioner, this proclamation is being brought forward by Public Health and Social Services, and I'm gonna ask Kurt if he's aware if we're going to have any guests present to receive the proclamation.
It's Kurt Harden, Interim Director for Public Health and Social Services. I was going to say that we usually do have guests and we're lining those up. I don't have the list with me right now. My apologies, we'll get that to you. And we typically invite county employees who are veterans as well to either Zoom in or be in person for this proclamation and this reading. And this is done in observance of Veterans Day, which is everyone knows is on November 11th. And so this will be taking place on the 8th, just prior to Veterans Day.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
No.
No questions for me. Thank you, Kurt. Next will be an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
No items at this time.
Consent items A through D, starting with 3A, resolution adopting public works policy, POL-022 regarding organization of the county road system.
So Commissioners, items A, B, C, and D on your consent agenda for next week are all regarding adoption of policies for public works. This is in response to changes in the Washington Administrative Code, also known as the WACs. And I would ask Scott to just give a brief explanation of these policies.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, Commissioners as well. Scott Lindblom, County Engineer with Public Works. Yeah, as the Assistant County Manager mentioned, these resolutions before you are in alignment with the Washington Administrative Code. Some changes in that cover or that require the county legislative authority to adopt by resolution or ordinance written policies that cover any matters relating to the county road department. And specifically, the WAC calls out several specific policies that have to be adopted by the board. And I'll just list them off quickly and I'll go into a little very brief discussion about each, but certainly there's the organization. So again, a policy has to be required about the organization, about how Public Works handles complaints, how Public Works works for others. And another one is the survey monument preservation. So real briefly, these are nothing new, but the only new thing is the change in the WAC that requires these to be adopted. The organization has a Public Works policy that shows the interrelationships of all the positions involved with the administration, operation, maintenance, and construction of the county road system. And it also includes an org chart, which again has to be adopted through resolution. And the Public Works policy does cover that and it meets the intent. Secondly, the complaint handling policy that Public Works has adopted, we did update it this year, but again, it's nothing new. Again, the only change is it's required to be adopted by the board. Work for others, that is a policy about how Public Works works for other public agencies and other county departments. And again, we've had a policy in place on that for several years. This policy, again, will be adopted by the board by resolution. The last one is the only new policy that we created this year that was in regard to survey monument preservation, which talks about the importance that there is to preserve our survey monuments within the right-of-way. We have a new policy about that and a procedure to go along with it. The requirement, though, is for the board to only adopt the policy, not the procedures. So the items before you contain both 4 separate resolutions to go along with the 4 separate public works policies. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, Scott, when were these changes to the WAC made?
Earlier this year, they became final. I believe it was January of this year, effective February of this year, February 18.
Is this the first we're hearing about this?
I don't know if you've heard about this before or not, but again, I guess I would emphasize that there are policies that we've had in place. The requirement, though, is that the board adopt by resolution or ordinance these existing policies.
And when's the deadline that we're supposed to have? This
By the end of the year, end of 2022.
Is there anything in this at all that you could say is controversial?
No, actually, absolutely not, because the organization, as I can go through them real briefly, the organization is just showing in an org chart essentially what we already have and what we already do. The complaint handling, work for others, it's what we already do, and we have existing policies for that. And the only new one, again, is the survey monument preservation, which just is a policy that we created. It was required that we create the policy to identify how Public Works will preserve our survey monuments within the right-of-way that not only we use, but the private community uses those as well. So,
Okay.
I mean, this is probably, my guess, one of the more, or the least controversial items that you might have before you.
Okay, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
What is a survey monument?
It's some call it a survey benchmark, or it's just that location in the right of way that we use those where surveyors, whether the public or private, can tie into it's kind of a point of reference that our surveyors can say this specific spot, we know the latitude and longitude down to the, I'm not sure what the level of detail is, but we know the exact location. And then from there, they can measure, the beginning of a road project is, 528 feet north of this monument. So it's a way we can then tie everything together kind of spatially in the real world.
Got it, thank you.
No questions for me. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Could you send us maybe a copy of that, a WAC, and kind of highlight, what the new change has been?
Oh, certainly. I will send that shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Public Works. And I'm seeing different ones, Scott, were they all addressed?
Yes, Commissioner.
yes, they
we
were.
Covered all 4 of these.
Moving on to department items 4A. It's in 4B, they're both approval of the voucher list, one for the week of October 3rd and the other for the week of October 10th.
Commissioner, we have both of these voucher lists on the agenda for this date, since the meeting on November 15th will be canceled. Both items, again, normally the voucher list would be on consent, but each of these lists includes payments in relationship to the atrium. And again, I would be happy to look up exactly what those payments are, but they are a small part of the voucher list.
There'll be adequate time to look into that, and, before next week. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Menzer, question? Okay. Moving on to item 5A from the Commissioner's Office, set a public hearing for the 2023 midterm budget.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is an item that I have put forward. This is to set the public hearings regarding the midterm adjustment of the 22-23 biennium. These public hearings are required by state law and Thurston County Code to be held on the first Monday of December and then continuing on until all office and department budgets have been heard. So this action sets the public hearings for December 5th at 1:30, 4 o'clock, 6 p.m. and 6:15. And on Tuesday, December 6th at 1:30, 2:30, 4 o'clock and 6 p.m. To hear the preliminary budget and accept public comment on the budget for this year. You may recall that this is the only public hearing where state law requires, or actually, yes, requires that the board accept questions from the public and officers from each office and department be present to respond to those questions. It's interesting.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards, questions?
I guess my only initial question is, where will we be having these public hearings?
Here in this room. We will be meeting even after the Commissioner's Office moves to the Atrium in this month. This is November. We will continue to hold your meetings in this room until the 1st of January.
Do we normally say in our verbiage here that the meeting will be held at?
We can certainly add that.
I just wonder, for clarification, it might help the public while we're ironing everything out, I guess. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Menzer, questions?
No.
Okay. Moving on to item 5B, set a public hearing on revenue sources for the 2023 midterm budget.
This also is a requirement in state law that the Board of County Commissioners holds a public hearing regarding revenue, in specific, the revenue related to the property tax change, but also any other revenue that supports the preliminary budget. So we are setting that hearing. That will be part of the public hearings on the budget on Tuesday, December 6th at 4 o'clock. Will be all about the revenue. We can add the location to this one as well.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, that was fine, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
No.
Okay. Moving on to community planning and economic development, item 6A, contract with Mal.
Mal.
Mal, Foster and Alongi. So this is a contract for professional services. And Andrew, I'm going to ask if you would please provide the detail on this one.
Absolutely. So this is part of the official comprehensive plan docket item CP8. This was approved in the 2022-2023 docket cycle. This is for the industrial lands assessment to take a look at the county's industrial lands to see if we are underperforming or overperforming, and hopefully gain some feedback from the consultants that we can take and actually implement whatever the board's goal is for the county's future with industrial. And so we received one contract from Mal Foster Alongi Inc. For a total of $84,000, and it will be spread out over the course of this year and into later next year, with the tentative end date of December 31st, 2021 or 2023, or 2020. Yeah, sorry, dates. And so we don't anticipate it going that long, but it covers that extent. And this is my first time doing a contract, so it's going to be fun. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
And I guess this would be for Andrew. What funding source is this 85,000 coming from?
So I'll take that, Commissioner Edwards. This is general fund, professional services that was allocated by the Board of County Commissioners during the budget cycle.
And that budget has been approved?
Yes, sir, it has.
It's in your original budget
Yes.
for this biennium.
For 2022?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer, questions?
No, thank you.
And I don't have questions. Moving on to item 6B, set a public hearing for Development Code Docket Item A-22, Boundary Line Adjustment Code Amendment.
So this item is to set a public hearing on December 13th at 3:30. Also here in this room 280. And this will, this amendment is to change the current code language to be in compliance with state law and address certain issues. And Andrew, I'd ask if you would please add some context to this.
Absolutely. The overall purpose of the code update is to address the compliance issues that we are having with case law that happened in 2005 and 2003. And so we are, with this code, addressing those compliance issues, as well as worked with the Building Development Center to identify programmatic issues that they were facing. And so what we are doing with this code update is addressing those case law issues and improving the overall process and organization of the code so that it's clear on the expectations for the applicants and what materials they are expected to provide with the overall boundary line adjustment application.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards, question, sir.
Yes, did this go through the Planning Commission and did they make a recommendation if it did?
It did go through the Planning Commission and they recommended 7 to 2 for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer, question.
No, I don't have any.
Commissioner Edwards, this was one of the matters that we discussed, I think, while you were at the EDC conference that was on the, so just an FYI, we rehashed it a little bit at agenda setting last week, but just wanted to give you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll look that up.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Thank you. Emergency services, item 7A, contract for FFY22 Homeland Security grant number E 23-113.
Thank you, Commissioner. This item is to accept a Homeland Security grant. That is a national grant for FFY is federal fiscal year 2022. This money comes through the Washington State Military Department. And Thurston County is actually the coordinating agency for Homeland Security Region 3 in Washington State. That includes not only Thurston County, but also Grace Harbor, Lewis, Mason, and Pacific County. So this $234,000 will cover equipment, exercises, training, and planning for the entire region. And it comes again through the state of Washington to Thurston County. It's federal money and does not affect the general fund.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Edwards.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menzer.
No.
Okay, no questions for me. Moving on to item 7B. Contract for SFY 22-23 State Individual Assistance Grant number D 23-014.
This item also for emergency management is to accept a award of federal funds that comes, again, it passed through the Washington State Emergency Management Organization, which is the part of the military department. And the state individual assistance grants is to provide assistance to individuals who were impacted by the extreme weather events in fiscal years 2022 and 23. So this is specifically related to the disaster that was declared around I think it was the flooding at the end of December and early January of 2022, and will provide household appliance and home repair to individuals who were affected. The money comes from FEMA. This is FEMA money. Is that right, Kurt?
Everything except that it's not FEMA money. This
Oh.
is state money. The state came up with a grant for individuals who've been impacted by the disaster.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards, questions?
Yes, do we have individual applications on file for this assistance?
So we have not, we have information on individuals who had been impacted by the disaster, and we provided that information to the state. We will take that information and go out and do outreach to those individuals once this is approved, and to see if they have unmet needs, because this is designed to assist people with unmet needs in their household appliances and or home repairs.
I guess I'm specifically curious about a disabled veteran down in the Nisqually Valley that had quite a bit of damage. I don't want to get into particulars for that individual now, but is that the kind of assistance that you potentially will be covering?
That's potentially, yes. We'd have to take a look at each individual situation, but yes, that is the type of a grant, or that's the type of repairs that this grant is designed to do, depending on the actual individual situation.
And are we up against a time frame here?
No, we have until June 30th, 2023 to expend these funds. What we need to do is go out once the Board of County Commissioners, if they approve it next Tuesday, then we also have a budget amendment in, because this was unanticipated revenue coming in, but we have a BA2 budget request in for this quarter. And so we, once all that falls into place, we will also at the same time be reaching out to individuals to get their information to expedite the process.
it seems as well that we had some problem with this same flooding experience down around Little Rock and Rochester area as well during that time frame. Is that correct?
During that time frame, this covers all impacts from the winter storms and flooding from December 12th, 2021 to, I want to say January 15th, 2022.
Okay, the reason I'm asking so many questions, I'm trying to figure out how we will not leave somebody out. You know, you mentioned that we'll go out and contact folks, but do we have something we're gonna put out as far as a news release or contacting the people in those particular areas in mass somehow? Or I just don't wanna 6 months from now or later have someone come forward and say, I didn't know anything about this. So are we in pretty good shape here to get that covered?
Yeah, I believe so, because we went through and we identified and did outreach back in January and early February for people who were impacted by the flooding and the winter storms. And we also went through the areas to assess the damages as we went through. So we have a lot of detailed records, but we also will do outreach as well for anyone who may have slipped through the cracks beforehand back in January and February.
So Kurt, what is the communication plan for letting communities know the money is available?
Well, and I will get that to you. I don't have that in front of me right now.
Great.
Again, this is new money that just arrived on our doorstep, so to speak. We'll have to get the BA2 budget amendment passed first, but while we're doing that, we will be doing the communication plan and outreach to make sure we reach out to individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mensah, questions?
Yes, so if there's folks that want to reach out, I mean, is there, like, I'll be speaking to the Rochester Grand Mound Chamber on Wednesday. If I talk about this and they have questions or they want to make sure they applied or they were, who can I direct them to?
The emergency management phone number, 360-867-2800, and then they can they can leave a message if it's after normal duty hours, but also somebody answers that during the day, and they can take their information down. They can also go to our website.
That's 867-2800.
Correct, and I'll validate that and get that out to all the commissioners as well.
And the 365,000, you might have said this, I didn't catch it. Is there like $5,000 limits or something like that, or?
The household appliance limit is $6,400, and home repairs are limited to $37,900. So it's up to those amounts.
And
everybody needs documentation, i.e. receipts, to document the expenses that they've incurred.
And is it your shop that would be making those assessments and eligibility determinations?
Yes, the contract's coming through emergency management.
Okay, thank you. And you kind of answered my other question, because when we were talking about federal money, it was like, we don't qualify, it's just local government. So this is something, and I didn't know this was coming. Sounded like maybe you didn't know it was coming either.
No, we didn't know it was coming either. It was the legislature did appropriation, and so this is unanticipated revenue coming in after the legislative session at the start of this state fiscal year.
The period, though, it says is December 12th, 2021. So doesn't capture, I think, the Nisqually. Wasn't that the year before?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's what I want to figure out.
There is any damage that was incurred by individuals in Thurston County during the December 12th, 2021 to January 15th, 2022 winter storm flooding event. I would go back and see if anyone was impacted along the Nisqually River as an example, because I know that river rose. But as far as individuals, I can't determine that until we take a look at the list of people who are impacted.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Just one quick follow-up, Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
You were going to clarify a phone number? Is that what you were going to do, Kurt?
You're right. I will clarify that phone number here in just a second and get that out to everybody.
Oh, okay, I'd like to have the public have it a little more than me. That's,
And I will, I am
you're
in the
working on
middle
it.
trying to pull it up. It's one of those where I always think I know what the number is until I have to be quoted on TV.
Could it be 786?
No, no,
2800? No?
867, here we go, 360-867-2800.
Okay.
360-867-2800.
Right. And that's our emergency management offices at Tilly Road.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, a lot of my questions got asked. So I don't have any further. Thank you for that. I think this is pretty great. Because I know that there was a lot of damage that was incurred during that time. And okay, moving on to Public Health and Social Services. Item 8A, contract with Low Income Housing Institute for $1,741,380 in regionally pooled SHB 1406 funds for construction of the 2828 Martin Way Phase 2 affordable housing project.
Yes, Commissioner. The Low Income Housing Institute is about to break ground on a project, and that is a 63-unit multifamily rental project for homeless seniors. They have requested funding, and the Regional Housing Council has recommended commitment of 1.7 million, as you see in this motion. That funding would come from all jurisdictions participating in the Regional Housing Council, including the City of Tumwater, the City of Lacey, the City of Olympia, and Thurston County would all be paying into this project. The 1.7 million, I'm gonna turn to Jacinda on this, but I do believe that that would only be a portion of the cost of the total project. So Jacinda, if you'd like to tell us anything more about this, please.
Thank you, Robin. Good morning, commissioners. This is, as Robin mentioned, the second phase of Lehigh's 2828 Martin Way project serving homeless seniors. The 1.7 that we are asking for approval to enter into contract again is pooled 1406 funding, that sales and use tax funding. The other jurisdictions involved in Regional Housing Council have approved their portions. I do want to just briefly mention that Yelm is also part of our Regional Housing Council. They are not contributing to this project only because their portion of 1406 was only around $15, and it just didn't make sense for them to take an action to their council for that amount. And yes, so the 1.7 is a portion of the larger project amount. This project has several funding sources, including some state funding and our HUD home funding, as well as Olympia's home fund funding. So this will get the project underway. That's expected to close in January, close financing and break ground shortly afterward with approximately 15 to 18 months construction period.
Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Commissioner Edwards, sir, go ahead.
Yes. As we move forward, I guess the first thing, where does a senior, what's the age of a senior? Where does that start off at?
Yeah, HUD defines, U.S. Housing and Urban Development defines senior as 62, age 62 plus.
Okay. Now, because I'm concerned that we make sure we help our own people first, And the reason I'm saying that is we're a state that has very lax drug laws, which are almost non-existent. We have a lot of compassion, and our assistance is almost unending. So we have a lot of folks that come here from all around the United States, and I would like some assurance that we're prioritizing for our own residents that have fallen on hard times for whatever reason. And so do we have anything in here to verify some type of residency, or that we're assisting folks that have been here for a period of time? What's the criteria as to who we're going to put at the head of the list, so to speak?
Commissioner
That's my
Edwards.
question.
Sorry. To answer your question, Commissioner Edwards, this project is owned by Low Income Housing Institute, and there aren't any residency requirements. There are income requirements and age requirements, as it's a senior project. Lehigh has been working in our community for quite some time, and this project will occur adjacent to their phase 1, which includes Unity Commons. But to, I guess, clearly answer your question, we don't typically put in our contract any residency requirements.
I guess I would just like to conclude, Madam Chair, with my concern that I'm all about helping folks that need help, but I want to make sure that we help those citizens that very possibly contributed to our local community over the years, and then for no reason of their own possibly, they've fallen on these hard times. And we have people, unfortunately, that come here from elsewhere because they know the situation, as I explained earlier, that we're very compassionate. We have no drug laws for those that like to partake in that activity. And so I want to make sure we do have some residency issue addressing this. Now, I don't know how to impose that, or maybe I'm going to be told that that is some type of an improper question to ask people that are here for assistance. But I think the taxpayers would like to know that their taxpayer money is being spent appropriately for our own folks, not people from Kansas City or New York that have learned how to game the system, if you will, and come to our community to take advantage of our goodwill. So I'll let it go at that for now. But I would like to have a better answer as far as residency. Thank you.
So Jacinda, I'm assuming that part of LIHE's funding for this project is coming from HUD, the federal government?
Yes, this project has HUD home funding in it. It has Olympia local home fund.
Right.
Then it also has some state funding, Housing Trust Fund, and the low income housing tax credits as well.
Right, and so it's been a long time since I've looked at the specific requirements attached to the federal funding, but it seems like residency is not an allowable criteria under that funding that we would receive from the feds.
Then I would comment that with the other funding sources in there, if we restrict residency, that makes it very difficult for other funders to put their money in as well. I don't know that they would necessarily restrict funding those other programs. So even if we put it in a contract, we typically are trying to work with all of those other funders to make a project happen, and having one contract that restricts residency where others don't make it very difficult for Lehigh to actually construct and operate and lease up that that property.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Mensah, questions?
No, thank you.
You know, I'm wondering, is there a possibility, we do the time and count, the point in time count on a yearly basis. And I'm wondering if at that time we can get residency information, right? To kind of, but, you know, I guess my question for Commissioner Edwards, it's like, you know, what makes someone, you know, a resident of Thurston County how long do they have to live here? Is it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, you know, 20 years?
If you're asking me, Madam Chair, I would say, my only concern is that we prioritize our own folks first. I don't know what that means, but we've only got so many dollars, so many bed spaces, if you will, available. And I want to make sure that our own folks that maybe have been paying taxes here all along, and they've fallen on hard times for whatever reason, at least that they can get to the front of the line rather than somebody that's learned to game the system from Kansas City. That's all. I want to help folks, but I realize we've got a limited funding source, and that's why I'm asking that we look into this in some fashion, because there's a lot of reasons for people to come here from elsewhere, and I'm just trying to solve the problem. So, thank you.
As far as the point in time count, Commissioner Mejia, we have in the past included a question on residency, and I'm sure that we could do so again.
Okay. And what's that data come like before? Is it?
I would have to look, I don't recall the numbers. Jacinda, do you?
Yeah, the point in time count, just a reminder, usually happens in January, and there is that option to ask residency. I do want to remind everyone, though, that people are not required to answer the survey, and they're not required to answer that residency question. So they can still be counted without necessarily knowing their residency. And our office has done that count. I don't want to quote a number because that's not something that I directly work on, but I can get that all to you guys. And it is something that I know the State Department of Commerce has not finalized our numbers yet or given those numbers blessing, but Ariel Benson in our office heads up that count. And again, I can get those numbers to you if you all wish.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are we talking about, Madam Chair, when these numbers we're talking about, what are we talking about? We're talking about the number of people in the point in time who answered the question and said they were from out of the area?
Yeah, I
Is that
was
the number
wondering.
you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to Public Works, item 9A, ordinance to adopt the amended speed limit schedule for various county roads.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this is the amendment that would adopt the speed limits that have been under consideration for the last couple of months. The board has held a public hearing on this item, and so I see Matt is here, and I'm sure he can answer any questions that you may have.
Good morning, Commissioners. We've had public hearing and a briefing. As you know, we're recommending that next Tuesday you approve the revision of 8 speed limits throughout the county. Those roadways are 93rd, 199th, Case Road, Fish Trap Road, Houston Drive, Red Cloud, Tyrell, and Woodard Bay Road.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards, questions?
No particular questions unless Matt has had second thoughts about adjusting any of these. I guess that'd be my-
No second thoughts here, sir.
Okay, good to go, thank you.
Commissioner Menser, questions?
No.
Okay. No questions for me, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 9B, set a public hearing to update Thurston County water and sewer rates.
So this public hearing would be about water and sewer rates. It is part of the budget process and is set for Tuesday, December 6th at 5 p.m. So it will be part of your budget hearings. We'll also review this revenue as part of the revenue public hearing. And the adjustments would increase water rates in the Boston Harbor utilities, the Tamashan utilities, and the Olympic View utilities in 2023. The additional funding would be used for development of a plan and support the operational costs of the utilities. And we have, I don't see Tim on the screen, so I could attempt to answer any questions about this item that you may have, but again, this is simply to set the public hearing. And the increased revenue is included in the board's preliminary budget.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, we'll get those answered maybe at the public hearing. Thank you.
Commissioner Menser, questions?
No.
Are we going to have a briefing about these rates?
So I believe that there has been a briefing already about the rates, but we could certainly have the department come and give you additional information prior to the public hearing.
I don't remember it.
It was a few months ago.
Or more.
Possibly.
I remember that we just having a discussion on it on a higher level, but not really getting into it.
Right. So you did have a briefing on July 14th regarding the advantages of consolidation of the utilities, but this is not a move to consolidate. This is simply to increase the rates in each of the communities.
Okay.
So very possibly talked about the rate increases on that date. Because we tend to do briefings regarding revenue changes in July so that offices and departments can include them in their budget submittals.
Okay. Okay, so no questions at this time. Moving on, after that, it's our standing items. We do have a public hearing at 3:30 p.m. And this public hearing is in regards to the emergency housing ordinance, docket item A-24.
Yes, this item is for your emergency housing ordinance. This ordinance has been approved on many occasions, but it would once again extend it, and I'm going to ask Chris to talk a little more about the ordinance.
Yes, so this is actually the permanent ordinance. This is not the renewal. This is not the renewal of the interim ordinance. Yes. So we are asking, we will be holding the public hearing for this permanent ordinance of the emergency housing portion of our homeless encampment ordinance. With this, it would make the interim ordinance permanent. But I would like to point out that due to the timing in the permanent ordinance and the interim ordinance needing to be renewed, there is a gap. So meaning that if the board does not take action on the permanent ordinance on the 8th, that we will not be able to bring forward for renewal the interim ordinance. And effectively, the interim ordinance would not continue to be in effect until the board made a decision on the permanent ordinance in which they heard the public testimony. Does that make sense?
Okay, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I guess if we are up against a time frame to maybe include something in this ordinance, I guess I want to raise my concerns that are very similar to what I raised about the homeless senior issue. And that is that, you know, our drug laws in the state of Washington are such that it's almost no consequences to using whatever drugs you want. And we are a very compassionate and caring community and give all the assistance that someone might need. And there are many reasons for folks to come here from all around the country. And my concern is that if we don't have some type of a residency issue or criteria, we're just going to keep getting flooded here in our community. I think this should be a criteria statewide, but I'm only addressing this here locally, that it is a solution if we would prioritize our assistance to those folks based on folks that have possibly been, them or their families, maybe have been paying taxes here for a long time, and they get no preferential treatment whatsoever over someone that shows up from New York that knows how to game the system. So that's the reason that my concern is about the residency issue. So will we be able to add something to this ordinance after we have the public hearing, if I could get one of my seatmates to agree with me?
We can certainly amend the ordinance post-public hearing. Depending on that amendment, we may or may not have to reissue a public hearing notice to take testimony on that. But if there's substantial changes, however, yes, if the board wishes to make those amendments, they can direct staff to do so.
And that could take place then after we've had the public hearing?
Yes,
Yes.
the whole point of a public hearing.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering if it's minor amendments or is asking, including criteria about residency, is that a major amendment to the ordinance?
We would have to discuss that with the attorney's office once we determined what that amendment looked like, based on the board's direction.
Right. So,
Okay, thank you.
Chris, could you very briefly recap exactly what changes this code change would make in our
Sure.
county code?
I'm going to ask Leah to do that.
I guess, and I would like to just mention, I've asked Leah this question before, if there's anything in there about residency criteria, and it's not been a change.
I understand there is not.
That's my concern. I'm not as concerned with any changes we've made, but that's,
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Leah, quickly recap what.
Good morning, Commissioners. Leah Davis with Community Planning. We did a briefing on this item A24 on September 28th. The changes that are carried, most of the changes from the interim ordinance are carried over to the permanent version. There is, through the Planning Commission work sessions and public hearing, some amendments were made. One is a cap on population from a maximum of 40 to a maximum of 80 instead of no cap at all. That's only with a waiver. Oh, there was one more. It's escaped me right now. Do you remember it, Chris? I can't remember. There was one more change that the Planning Commission made.
The allowance of alcohol.
Right, allowing alcohol and illegal drugs, leaving that up to the discretion of the host agency, and also putting in a recommendation but not a requirement for a safe storage for weapons. I think those are all of the changes that will be in the permanent version.
And those are changes to the interim ordinance.
That's correct.
That has been in place for how long?
Well, it was first adopted in 2019, and then it was subsequently renewed 5 times through December 9th, 2022. So it will expire in a little over a month.
And then, okay, Commissioner Menzer, questions?
So the ordinance sets up a structure by which a temporary encampment could be authorized. It doesn't authorize any particular encampment. It just sets up basically the rules by which something like that could move forward. Is that correct?
The homeless encampment chapter, which was adopted in 2010, allows encampments to be permitted. This is a specific portion that during an emergency crisis, homelessness crisis, some waivers can be adopted. So those are the amendments that are included in this version of the ordinance.
There would need to be an application for a particular proposal.
That's correct. There's no proposal at this time. There has only been one application submitted that was withdrawn approximately a year ago. So yeah, we do require a permit application and a review for compliance with the ordinance.
And the decisions that would be made about the application would be case specific. Certain waivers could be executed, other ones maybe not, based on the structure that's set forth in the ordinance.
That's correct. And each waiver must be requested by the applicant and then reviewed by the director, who takes it to the Board of County Commissioners for input, and also requires a public information meeting to get feedback from all stakeholders prior to any waivers.
And if an additional requirement for some formulation of a residency requirement wanted to be added by the board or the director of CPED or whomever, could that be done, or is that precluded if it's not embedded in this ordinance?
Well, that would be precluded if it's not embedded in the ordinance. And I don't know the legality of that, so it would have to be reviewed by the legal department. It's a land use amendment or a land use ordinance, so typically we don't have that kind of language in land use ordinances. But I'm willing to discuss that if the board sets that direction for staff.
Can we review it with legal? Is that a possibility? I mean, and not, we're going to have the public hearing, and then after that, I'm seeing, we can have a follow-up briefing, and then at that time, the legal opinion can be brought forth and we can discuss it. But is that okay with commissioners?
Sure. Thank you. Good.
So, Chris, for any reason, if for any reason the board does not adopt this item before the interim ordinance expires, is it correct that there are no outstanding applicants that would be impacted if it took if there was a gap of 2 to 6 weeks between the interim ordinance expiring and the permanent ordinance being adopted, what would be the impact of that?
So you are correct. There are no current applications at this time. The impact would be that if there are any applicants who are creating their application to submit, they would not be able to submit should the interim ordinance expire.
And we've had one application that was withdrawn in the last 3 years.
That is correct.
Yeah, so it's gonna be.
Yeah.
When is our interim set to expire?
The 9th of December.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. And then after that, we will be closing our public hearing and we'll be moving to our 4:30 Board of Health, which that is the next item on our agenda, and I will pass it to the chair.
Can we take a break, Madam Chair?
Yeah, quick break.
Yeah, sure. Can we take a 15-minute break? Come back at 11.
Thank you.
You're live.
Thank you. We are back from break. It is 11:01 a.m. We left off with the review of the Board of Health draft agenda for our meeting of November 8th, 2022. And I will pass this to the chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are going to call our meeting to order at 4:30, and we expect that to be on time, although there's a remote possibility, I guess, that we would still be concluding the public hearing and the business meeting from earlier. But we'll look at approval of the agenda and meeting minutes from October 11th. And then we're going to change this agenda somewhat. What's designated as a presentation will actually be the first department item. So after approval of agenda and meeting minutes, we'll have opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health. Then we'll look at first item, which will be Public Health and Social Services Overview. And Kurt will be giving that, and I don't see him, so we'll just move forward. The next department item will be resolution setting regular Board of Health meeting date, time, and location. And I think it should be straightforward. We'll have items 5 and 6, might be renumbered, but it'll be Board of Health Chair designation and Vice Chair designation. We took nominations, and we didn't have the actual action in the agenda, so this is basically an action. I think I was the only chair nomination, and for vice chair, I believe we had 2 nominations, and so we'll just discuss that if we need to and have a vote. And then the last item will be covering Board of Health meeting topics. Kind of 2 parts to this. One is to identify any initial subcommittees. I would say, that we talked about, if nothing else, having an agenda setting subcommittee that might involve the chair and vice chair and administrator. And then kind of brainstorming through the board about other subcommittees we might want to form right away or in the near future. And discussing any key, since we haven't actually formed that subcommittee on agenda setting, just getting any input that folks want to give on topics they want covered. And Kurt can guide us through anything he thinks we need to have covered in our next couple of Board of Health meetings. Any questions about all of those items? Yeah, Commissioner. Board Member Edwards.
Yeah.
Where Commissioner?
Just a process question, I guess. I nominated you to be chair of the Board of Health. And then I think we had 2 other nominations for vice chair. And I'm wondering if we're going to take an action on that at the November 8th board meeting, does it have to say, we've had a nomination of, and then it'll say, time answer, and down here for vice chair, it'll say so and so and so and so. I'm just asking that question because I think we have to make the nomination the meeting before, and then we vote on it. Is that right? I don't know the answer to that, but I don't see any names here. We talked about, we kind of did it, but we don't have any names. So I'm just curious.
I think the plan was to have done it last week, but we just didn't word the action item of the agenda correctly. So we were being very cautious.
Right.
So I don't know that we have to nominate a meeting before. I think we could have done it. Had agenda been worded correctly, we could have moved and adopted the chair and vice chair. So I'm not sure that's an issue.
Okay. I'm not either, so I didn't bring it up.
But we can just double check with Kurt maybe.
Yeah, and I'll ask him to verify with legal as well. I left him open like that in case there was a change so that we didn't have something on here that further limited us at that point, because we don't have that resolution that establishes everything as far as the date and the time of the regular meeting. So we have to follow this agenda very strictly. So I was hoping by leaving at least the name out, if we're making the note or making it known we're taking an action on that to designate it, at that point the person could be identified.
And going back to the resolution, that's something you said that we have not been distributed yet?
I can get you a copy of it. It's attached to the AIS, but I can definitely get you a copy of it as well. And I do believe, just to piggyback off of that department item about identifying the initial subcommittees, I believe legal had pointed out that they do have to be put in place by resolution itself, and I'll verify that so we can kind of identify them. Once we got them, then they can go through the process of drafting that resolution so that you have the actual subcommittee taken care of for the Board of Health.
And the resolution, so setting the date, time, and location. Something I was going to say about that, and I just kind of slipped my mind. So you're saying okay, I remember. We had talked about at our agenda setting meeting, when we're trying to standardize when information goes out to the various members. That was when, by Friday?
Yeah, so it was last Friday. It was going to be 2 Fridays before we would distribute the copy of the agenda draft there to kind of make any, changes to it. And then it would be the actual Friday before the meeting is when the final copy would go out there.
So last Friday, so yeah, so hopefully as a process that the county commissioners can understand, you'll see a draft agenda like last Friday, in a typical month. That way you could give any input to it, and then this week we'd be finalizing materials. A packet will go out to all board members on this Friday, which will be the Friday before the meeting. So they have the weekend and Monday to digest any materials that are attached, review a proposed resolution if that's what we're going to be addressing. So that's kind of what we've got as a tentative plan, so that everybody gets information at a predictable time with enough time to review. Any questions, other questions from the board? No, sure. Okay.
For clarification for that for myself, previously we were just sending that agenda draft and stuff out to the people, the chair and the county the county manager, and then the PHSS director. So did you want that to go to the entire board there?
No, it'll be probably the subcommittee of the.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was it. Okay, then we'll have just standing items, Board of Health's members' reports, if any, and I'm just, we'll just keep that kind of as folks want to. And then health officer's report, and were we not gonna have a director's report?
Kurt had asked me to leave that off unless he had regular, something to bring up. He said occasionally he could probably just piggyback off of Dr. A's.
He's got the presentation, okay, so that's fine. We do want the health officer's report back on as a standing item, and that was added, so. All right, then I will pass it back to you, Madam Chair, for item 5.
Thank you. Okay, so proclamation and awards and advisory board and commissions. I'll pass this to Jamie Caldwell, our clerk of the board.
Good morning. So outside of the proclamation previously reviewed, I have no further update. For the boards and commissions, I did receive 2 new applications that have been included for your review. One was a reappointment request from Eric Casino to the Planning Commission, and the other was an appointment request from Daniel Vlad to the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board. I reached out to both staff contacts, and the Planning Commission is recommending reappointment of Mr. Casino. Earlier this morning, I received an email from the staff contact for the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board, and they are requesting that they have additional time to review Mr. Chaudhry's application. This morning, I forwarded him another application received over the weekend for the same district seat, so they're requesting additional time to compare the two and decide which they want to recommend for appointment to the District 3 seat. They have their next meeting on the 17th, so I'd like to request adding him back to the standing application list and updating it with the one that I just received over the weekend, so that they have the chance to review all 3 applications, and then ask that you guys make an appointment decision after the 17th.
Questions, Commissioner Menser, you have your hand up.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, because so on the Planning Commission, we have a different process there where the commissioner themselves nominates. So this would be Commissioner Edwards' nomination for him to bring to the board when he's ready. And then on the Storm and Surface Waters, so I think you clarified it, this Mr. Vlad is a different, and now there's yet another.
Yes, yeah, for District 3. So Mr. Vlad is for District 2, and then we had the one for Mr. Chaudhry and he's District 3. I received another one over the weekend for District 3.
And we also have an at-large seat.
Yes, yeah.
So are there 3 open seats?
Yes, and they actually are expecting a resignation, so there should be another District 2 seat coming up as soon as they receive the resignation letter from one of their current sitting members.
So in theory, all 3, Mr. Chaudhry, Mr. Vlad, and the new person could all be appointed.
Yes. Yes.
To be good appointments. Okay. All right, that was my question. Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards.
Well, I guess going back to the District 2 appointment, I don't know if it helps anything. Yes, I would recommend Mr. Casino from a District 2 position. But actually, we've already kind of sidelined this storm and surface water. But what I'm wondering about, did we ever come to a conclusion or a vote, or are we prepared to make a vote on nominations for the Housing Authority? We're still kind of hanging fire there, I think, aren't we? Different ones had interviewed prospective members, and so somehow that got delayed one more time, I think. So are we any closer to making a decision? Or I guess my seatmates, I'm ready, but somebody was not. I don't even recall who
it was me. And I've been trying to schedule them in all as, you know, either they have time or I have time. I'm missing only a couple to go. One of them is Mr. Neil McClellan, who I kind of want to talk to since he's the position that I'm considered not reappointing. So I do want to talk to him.
Sure. I don't think there's a hurry.
You know, I managed to kind of get almost everyone on the list, but I think he's one of the big ones that we're going to be considering either reappointing or not. And so I did want to talk to him.
No hurry. No, I just wondered. Plenty of time.
But that was me, Commissioner Edwards.
Yeah, okay, that's fine for me. That was my only question.
So Commissioner Edwards, is your recommendation because I know the process for Planning Commission is different. So is this your recommendation to bring Mr. Casino forward to the board?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
A renomination, reappointment, whatever that is.
Or reappointment, yeah. Okay. So this is Commissioner Edwards' recommendation. Commissioner Mansur, do you need more time?
No.
And I don't either. So Mr. Casino's reappointment can be brought forward on next Tuesday's agenda.
Sure, do it today if you want. Doesn't matter to me.
Or yeah, just whenever. I'm asking Jamie to see what she.
Okay, whatever Jamie says.
I can put it on either date, whichever you prefer. I can do it today or I can do it next Tuesday.
Just be done with it.
Okay.
I recommend it today and get it over with, and then we'll work on other things farther down the road. That's pretty good coming from a procrastinator.
Okay, so any questions on those 2 items? If not, we'll move on to PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. My main lift this week is to get some communications out about the move to the atrium, since that's coming up. And so I'm working on a news release that we're putting out tomorrow, hopefully, and then update the webpage, update the homepage, and develop some flyers so that we can start putting those around to the different offices and departments and the dates in which they're moving and will be open at the atrium. pending any questions, that's what I have.
Thank you, Megan. I'm wondering, oh, I'll wait, sorry, I apologize, I just skipped ahead. Commissioner Edwards.
No, go ahead. I've been doing plenty of talking on all this stuff. I'll wait. The chairs, recognized. How's that?
Yeah. Commissioner Menser.
Nothing, no, go ahead.
Megan, I wanted to see, as we've started doing those 6 p.m. meetings, I'm wondering if more people are tuning in to that, like via YouTube, or is there a way to compare, like just in terms of public engagement?
Let me bring back some numbers next week. Unfortunately, once the video's over, I can't tell you how many have been watching it live because we haven't been checking every meeting. That is definitely something we can start doing, though, is checking to see who's watching those live versus who's watching the earlier meetings. But we haven't done that so far, so I can't give you those numbers. I can give you who's viewed them overall, though.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great, I think, just to kind of, maybe they're not coming in to provide public testimony, but even if they're tuning in, there's more people tuning in at 6 instead of 2. It would just be great to know those. And then I guess also comparing like the overall views would be great too, from, our people, who didn't catch it at 2, are they tuning in later to watch it? So just, I think the breakdown of those numbers would be great as, we consider this moving forward.
I will put that on for us to start capturing that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next is legislative update and county's 2023 legislative agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Katie Johnson, Executive Assistant to County Manager. I'm here to review an email Romero, County Manager, sent out last week regarding our 2023 Thurston County legislative agenda. He asked each commissioner to rank 0 to 5 in their own priorities, what we would like to put on our legislative agenda for the county this year. So I've added each of your numbers up, and we're gonna go for a ranked top 4 is what we're hopefully narrowing down to. You'll see on your sheets I've provided to you the top 4 ranking. We have maintained judicial impact fees. That came out to a total of 14 points between the 3 of you. ITA court costs came out to a total of 12 points between the 3. And we have a tie between number 3 ranked spot and number 4 ranked spot for animal services funding and establish separate property tax levies for veterans and DD funds. Those both came out to rank 11. And number 4, we have joint several liabilities and Deschutes Watershed Council. Those both came to 10 points apiece. So I know that Deborah Munguia, I believe, gave a bit of information regarding these prior to rankings, but hopefully we're wanting to get to numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the top for county. I think it's fairly clear that maintaining judicial impacts fees and ITA courts rank at number 1 and 2. I don't know if you want to have more discussion regarding rankings 3 and 4, if you choose one or the other of those to move forward with. But I'm open to hearing.
Who's running the show here?
Commissioner Edwards, do you have any questions, comments on this?
Okay.
Start with
No, I wasn't questioning if you were running the show, ma'am. Didn't know if we were supposed to respond to her. Okay. I just kind of as a point, Commissioner Menser brought up that animal services funding business. I think that is really a valid issue if we could come up with a different funding source besides general fund, because I think we're at about $1 million or maybe more in total.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that right?
It's, if not there, we're getting darn close.
1.1.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there close, and I I really think that, that was the mayor from Tumwater or something brought that up one time to you. I think if others were exposed to the concept and were also being asked to commit general funds, you know, to something like that, that maybe could have a different funding source, I think a lot of jurisdictions might say, yeah, that makes sense. But they won't ever say that if we never talk about it.
Right.
So I really think that that's a very important issue. And so I'm gonna put a plug in. We all said, you know, judicial impact, that's all about money as well, and our ability to provide service. And the ITA courts as well, you know, making sure we get that all right. I just think that really has some merit. And I think the joint and several liability issue is so important to us. It's like, I don't know, $3 million this year or something, and it's quite a jump. So I don't know what it would take if we're gonna argue amongst ourselves kind of which is more important. If we only got to select 4, I think that's where I would be in selecting 4. Now, if we could select 5 or re-rank those, then I'm fine with that too. But I suppose Deborah is only capable of addressing so many things in a session.
Deborah's plenty capable. What Deborah has suggested, though, is that we focus on our efforts.
On our higher priorities, right?
Because I can tell you that when you come in with a laundry list of things
Yeah.
for, that we're supporting with no answers on how to get there, it's not particularly well received by the members.
Yeah, and so that's just my little plug for the discussion as far as if I had to settle it down to 4. So that's it for me, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer.
So I could live with the list that we've generated collectively. If I were making a plug for an item that fell short, it would be for the park impact fee flexibility. But, you know, that didn't make it to cut, and I can live with that. On joint several liability, Commissioner, did you see the case that Deborah sent us? So it gave a good history. So it clarified for me what Washington's law is, because I didn't quite understand. And we have a hybrid system in Washington, and it's a lot more fair than I think than pure joint and several liability, because it basically says if the plaintiff is even a tiny bit at fault, and we do a comparative. So there's 2 parts. There's a liability analysis and then there's damages. So on the liability analysis, we do a comparative negligence. That's the modern way to do it. And we say that everybody's got their percentage of fault. And if the plaintiff is even 1% liable or more, they don't get to collect. It's only in the case where it's deemed that the plaintiff was absolutely 0 at fault. No fault whatsoever of the plaintiff. Then they get to use joint and several liability and basically go after the deep pocket to make sure they get made whole. Again, it's still an issue, but it's not quite as bad as what I was thinking. You know, if you have a pure joint and several liability system, you know, you can have a greater quantity of those kind of unfair outcomes and you know, driving up the cost of local government or insurance companies or the deeper pocket. So when I read that, and then I read, I think it was Mike Hoover, the guy who gave kind of the legislative history of how dead in the water, I mean, he pretty much he painted a very stark case. Bleak, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. He painted a very bleak picture of the success, so I guess I'm less inclined to want to stick that into our list if, you know, given that layout, but
I deferred to my,
I just wanted to see if you heard that, because it's.
Yeah, I did, but I didn't understand it the same way you did.
It's a hybrid system, because
Sure.
it used to be, so like the other way to do it that was really harsh, it used to be that if the plaintiff, it's called contributory negligence, if the plaintiff is at fault at all, it can't recover anything. And that's really kind of a harsh way to do things. So we don't have that. We do it by percentage, and then we only allow joint and several liability where the plaintiff's percentage of fault is 0. Which, you know, I could see where back in the day that was, you know, was thought of as a good compromise. But, and if I saw any, you know, if I saw any bills that were, you know, down the pike, like getting close, you know, I might think about that seriously, but it doesn't sound like that's the case from Mike.
Good discussion.
Yeah.
I'm good.
What do you think, Commissioner Mejia?
I guess since everyone's putting a plug, I would put it on the meat processing plant, but that one's way down the list. But yeah, I mean, I can live with the top 4 that have been chosen on there. I just have a question about the animal services funding. I mean, would Deborah try to get someone to kind of sponsor that and get it passed through the ledge? Like, what would be the process for that? Since this is just something that, you know, we've had discussions about, but nothing that we've.
Yeah, we need a bill. Yeah, I mean, you know, like at some point, somebody has to put the I don't know exactly how that works when it's coming from a legislature. I'm looking at Robin, maybe if you've had any experience knowing, like, if it's an idea comes from the county, do our lawyers kind of cobble together a proposed legislation, or do we try to get a sponsor from the legislature who has legal staff that does that, or how do we go about?
We generally try to write a bill and get a sponsor. And then the bill can, of course, be adjusted working with the sponsor's staff.
Is it our prosecuting attorneys that would put that together?
It's not necessarily the prosecutors that would write the legislation. I mean, I've written legislation.
Because I mean, we would need financial, like, I would need to know, like, you know, I would need to know this language would estimate, you know, bringing in so much dollars. We don't want to overtax people, and we don't, you know, we want to target the amount of resources we think we need based on what's fair to be assessed on the particular item that we're going to target.
Well, right, but that's only somewhat related to writing the language of the bill. There's a lot that goes into writing legislation. That's more of a, how do we begin to estimate how much such a tax would generate? And I'm sitting here trying to think, you know, if I were to attempt to do that, how would I even figure it out based on such a narrow, you know, how to apply the tax? I'd want to be chatting with the Department of Revenue on what kind of data that there even is on how to begin to suggest that the sales tax would be, you know, X, like 1/10 of 1%. It would be much less than that, but but drafting the language, I could talk to Deborah to see who the appropriate person is to draft the language. But in my experience, when you look for a sponsor, you've got a draft bill in hand.
Yeah, well, I think they're, you know, like, I don't know how you do it, because, you know, if you were talking about, we talked about luxury pet toys or something.
Exactly.
Well, how do you figure out how many of those are sold in Washington State in a course of a year? So we could say this amount of tax on those number of items would generate, you know, $10 million. It then gets portioned by population to the counties.
Right.
Or whatever.
That's exactly the kind of detail that you have to work through.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, that we'd want to be talking to Department of Revenue to see, you know, if we collect sales tax and there's commodity codes attached to that. Is there even a commodity code that's that finite that we could, and then how do you define pet luxury? Well, it's not food, clearly, but, you know, what other things might it not be? And we ran into that definition challenge when the state enacted a candy tax. There was a whole lot of discussion about what is candy. And it would be that kind of a we'd have to be pretty clear about what a pet luxury item was. So again, you know, I'd look to Deborah to help us
How about?
figure out how to write a bill.
Is there any chance that, I don't know who's sat on that animal service board from Olympia, but we've got a couple of representatives, I think. Olympia City Council, like Jessica Bateman, she's now a representative. Did she sit on there at all?
The whole time, it's been Lisa Parsley the whole time that I've been on the county commission.
I just wonder if she wouldn't maybe
Be a sponsor.
entertain it. Yeah, you know, you could explain the concept to her, and she
Yeah.
might say, oh yeah, we could write that up.
Yeah.
So can I call Sarah, my aide, Sarah DeVell? Sarah, can you come into the boardroom, please? Because Sarah used to work at the legislature, so she knows how these things work.
Also,
Boy, she's quick. I don't get that quick.
Good morning. So from my experience at the legislature, you can definitely bring an idea to a legislator and have a meeting with staff, and staff can explore all the different options and come back with several different options as long as a legislator is interested. I know Jessica's a huge dog lover, so I could see
Yeah.
that she would be very interested in that idea too.
So too, yeah. So, I don't know, just a thought.
yeah, and I mean, every time I talked to Pete Komet about this, and it was several times he brought this up to me, he kept talking about the Model Toxic Controls Act, and I'm not sure how that
Oh, right.
fits, but he kept talking about that it was legal or it could be structured in that way. Like there was in his mind, there was an analog or a parallel, and I wasn't quite 100% sure.
There are certain things that you want in a revenue bill. And there's the establishment of a fund, the establishment of the tax. You gotta know which section of law that it has to go in, then how the collection's done. So I'm sure that we could look at that
Maybe just thinking
law
about that.
or yeah, but there are certain things that you want in any revenue generating bill.
Is it unrealistic, Sarah,
Yeah.
I mean, given that we're in November and the session's coming right up, I mean, this process that you've seen happen, can it happen in a couple of months? Or it sounds like maybe this is something we start working on for next year or something.
That's what I would definitely
Yeah,
suggest.
if we were going to be asking legislative staff to draft the legislation for us, it's too late.
I would say right at the end of next session would be a great time
Jump
to
on
start
it. Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Give them all summer to prepare and do all of the research, and then you have something final in your hands before November that a legislator would be comfortable sponsoring, yeah.
Yeah, if we were to go at this point for the upcoming session, we'd want a draft bill in our hand.
Yeah.
So then my next question is then, do we want this on our legislative priorities now, since it can't be something, or do we?
I'd say probably not.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to get it out there because without board interest, we can't even go forward to this process. So I'm happy to have it, hearing that my seatmates support it, I'm happy to just put it into the process of trying to develop for next year and maybe put a more timely item into that slot. It's fine with me.
And then maybe bring this up to the Wasac LSC as well, which is interesting. We had we discussed budgets yesterday, and Robin came to me at the Wasac meeting, and I brought up this point in regards to animal services, seeing if I would get kind of any input from other counties on how they were paying for it. And I heard peep. So
What? What's that?
I didn't hear anything.
Oh, didn't hear a beep. Oh, okay.
So I think maybe having a bigger discussion with Wasac and the legislative steering committee and
I think that different jurisdictions structure animal services in different ways.
I just do want to say though that I actually come from a veterinarian background in my family, and I can tell you that small animal practices are where the money's going, you know? So, there's a lot of people that care a lot about their critters. And I just think it might be a pretty good spot to go, you know? I mean, because we're gonna do critter things, we wanna recover that animal that has went astray.
There's us with my husband's little dog.
So I don't know, it's a good source, but I think, yeah, like if we do it next year, that makes more sense. Sarah knows what she's talking about on that, I can tell you.
So then let's add animal services funding, the tax on pet toys as an item for next year. Let's see if Deborah can help us find a sponsor for that. And go from there. And that was like my big question on it, not that, you know. And so then that would move the joint several liability up. So it would be maintain judicial impact fees, ITA court costs, establish separate property tax levies for veterans and DD funds, and joint several liability. Commissioners, are you?
Well, I think we'll do away with that joint, huh?
Are we doing away with the joint?
I think so. I tend to agree with my seatmate. Let's not beat ourselves about the head and shoulders if we don't have to.
And then the next one, you know, I would agree, and on the Watershed Council, I just want to say, I support this, and I brought it up just so that it was on the table. I will say, it's a small, you know, the request is a small one, and there's other folks working on this at you know, over our heads, so to speak, like pulling groups of legislators. I get CC'd on some of those communications, so, you know, I think if asked, I'm gonna always be supportive of this idea, but whether or not it should be one of our top 4 highest priorities, I don't know, because, you know, like you say, it's there may be something here that we find is more important, of greater magnitude. I don't know what, you know, again, I'm fine including it because I think the Watershed Council would be great, but I just wanted to share that because I know there's a group, some of the folks that, for example, that are, some of the folks that are involved in the Deschutes Estuary group, they are advocating for this. They were also participants in the watershed planning, the Deschutes watershed plan. And they've included me. I actually sat in on a meeting. They're working with Representative Bateman. I sat in on a meeting with them and her. I've also been invited to other meetings with other legislators. They include me as kind of the local voice for this. And so I'm hopeful that that money will come this session, regardless of whether we put it in our top priority or not.
So can I make a suggestion then? Can the Deschutes Watershed Council, since they're already working with Representative Bateman on this, could we add this under items that we support instead of adding it under our legislative priorities?
I'm sure we can speak with Deborah about that and that can be added. I know that we'll have a, I'm sure, longer list than this eventually, but.
Yeah, because we usually have items that we support, right?
Yes.
That it's not under our legislative priorities, but that we support. I'm wondering if commissioners would be okay with adding that to that list instead.
Yeah, I think that fits. That fits. I mean, frankly, ITA court cost fits in that as well because that's a healthcare authority item.
Okay.
But maybe putting it in, I mean, it could be of such, that one is a lot of money and a lot of services to our community. So I think as much as we could help backfill that, it's going to be a real positive. And it feels like it's getting momentum. That's why I'm feeling good about that one. This has been percolating the whole.
Do you want to let it go itself forward and us not listed as one of our?
No, well, I think we should support ITA court costs. I think the time is right.
Oh, for sure, support it, but you want it to be in that list of top 4?
I'm thinking maybe it should be unless you guys think.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think it should be.
Yeah, because it's just
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of important.
And the service.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
all
then
those people come from New York, we need to help them.
So then, the Deschutes Watershed Council seed money for formation under items that we support. Then that would move the next item up, which is county revenue and spending flexibility, REIT and park impact fees. So
Well-
that would be the next item.
That,
Or the
to
other
my
one.
note, Ag Park is
Yeah.
tied to.
Two of them are, both of those have 9, the ag park and the
Oh,
impact fee.
that's right.
I wanted some, if I remember the discussion, there was an argument that maybe the REIT wasn't quite the same or as easy and in 2019, I think my first year on the board, we tried to do park impact fee flexibility, and Beth Dolio was our sponsor on that. And if she's reelected, or if she's elected back into the legislature next week,
Let's just go.
we'd have, potentially her to help us on that one, and keep it limited to the park issue was my thought. But maybe it'll get further if it's not quite as broad, because remind me, Robin, there was some argument why the REIT wasn't a great.
That's because the REIT already has an allowance for operating and maintenance costs if the county meets certain criteria. So I think that asking the legislature to remove criteria that they implemented less than 3 years ago in REIT would just, personally, I think that would be a non-starter.
And we don't need that as badly as we need the park impact fee flexibility, right?
Yes, the park impact fee has no flexibility whatsoever.
I thought that was more to do with increasing the percentage, and I want to say 25% now, and we were talking about raising the percentage available. Was that it?
No, the REIT 1 and 2 both allow for a portion to be used for M&O, and I think it's up to 30% now, and then it drops to 25% in either 1 or 2 years. But you have to be able to show that every item on your CIP is fully funded. And the county can't do that.
Well, then how about, let's bump the ag park.
So I believe the ag part and the agricultural supply issues should be together, just because they kind of address a hole into what, our agricultural system is going through. But
Okay, good.
that's just my recommendation.
I don't know why we couldn't have that all in one line.
Before, can I felt like the park impact fee wasn't really, if I could just go back to that before we leave it. Robin, can you, correct me if I'm wrong, because the park impact fees right now, we're not allowed to use anything
No
for
portion
M&O.
for M&O.
And so the proposal is that we get to use like 15% or something, I think was the proposal.
I would structure the proposal for park impact fees much like you have for
Conservation futures.
exactly, conservation futures.
And we did get an opposition from the master builders on that when we proposed it.
Right.
I didn't necessarily agree with them. It was kind of like a slippery slope argument or something they were making. I don't remember the details of it, but it was, anyway, I just given my seatmates, because Commissioner Mejia wasn't even here for that. This was on our legislative agenda in 2019, and Beth Dolio, and it didn't get very far. Master builders sent us a letter saying they didn't think it was a good idea. And anyway, but that's the proposal.
So at this point, what I would recommend, and I know that Romero is recommending a bill that does both of these things. My recommendation would be to focus on the park impact fees, take REIT off the table or out of the bill, and work with the master builders who expressed opposition to see if there's some way we could structure the bill to be acceptable to them. So it would, at a minimum, support with concerns, but.
And then the alternative would be Commissioner Mejia saying ag park and ag supply. Is ag supply about the meat processing? Is that what that's, okay. And what exactly would we be asking for? Money?
So, well, yeah, funding, right? We have the study already in the works. And this was something that Lewis County, as well as Pierce County said that, you know, they would be in support of, and they would, like, if we did it, then they would as well. And so that's kind of why I wanted to kind of hone it down a little bit. You know, I feel like those two could be combined, since we have the study in the works, and we want to, the conversation I had with Lewis and Pierce is that they want to have the conversation get started, kind of almost like the animal services funding. They want the conversation to be started because once that study comes back, we'll need assistance with funding for that.
You know, regional issues do better anyway, so that's a regional issue, and if we did move forward with that, there's a better chance, I think. So I'd combine those two and move that up. So would that give us the 4 then?
But, you know, since the park impact one's tied, like, if we had 5, would it kill us?
I can put one down at 5 at least, and, you know, start off with the 4 and open the discussion for a 5th for Romero, and we can.
That's fine, I'm good with what my CMAs say there. If you want to put the add items at 4 and then maybe in parentheses, if we can squeeze a 5th, it would be park impact fees. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right.
Got it? Let's do it.
Let's do that.
Okay. It is 11:47. We do have an executive session coming up. How long do we estimate this executive session to take?
That is a really good question. I only learned about what this involves. I would say it would take at least 15 minutes, if not probably a little longer. Maybe Travis would have a estimate of how long this conversation might take.
Elizabeth or Travis?
Yeah, pretty hard to estimate, but I would probably say air closer to 30 minutes, depending on the interest of the board.
Okay. It's 11:48. Okay, so then I will go ahead and commissioners, do you have any items at noon or 12:30 that we need to hurry up and get this matter through?
I'm okay.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that I check in with everyone's schedule. Okay, so we'll go ahead and go into executive session for RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. Summit Lake Forest practice application, SEPA appeal. The commissioner's action may follow, will be an executive session for 30 minutes. And did we, have we stopped recording?
You're live.
We are back from executive session. We were in executive session for RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. This is in regards to the Summit Lake Forest Practice Application, FIPA appeal. Commissioners' actions follows this executive session, and I believe we're authorizing payment for outside counsel. And is there a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to authorize payment for outside counsel regarding the county's challenge to the forest practices application of DNR.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Edwards?
Aye.
Commissioner Mentzer?
Aye.
Commissioner Mejia?
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, with that, it is 12:20 p.m. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.